This is WMC Talks. We are a bi-monthly conversation highlighting women who are trying to change the narrative. And with us today, we have Nicole Carr. Before we get into our conversation, the Women's Media Center promotes the visibility and voices of women. We have an incredible training called Progressive Women's Voices. We just had the last round recently, and it helps coach women and feel safe about being out there because we want to hear more of we want to see more of our voices across opinion pages, podcasts, panels on TV. And so we've been doing the work for 20, 21 years to move the dial in that respect. But we'll just jump in. I've been really eager to talk to you. And first, a little bit about Nicole. She's a 4-time Emmy Award-winning journalist. You've seen her work in ProPublica, PBS Frontline, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, among other places and spaces. She's a professor at Morehouse College, and she is the author of the upcoming Price of Exclusion, which is debuting. Very good, yes. Price of Exclusion, which is debuting in June?
Yes, June 16th.
Right. So congratulations on that. It's not easy to put a book together.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
How was that processed?
Ooh, I just you gave me pause when you said that because it's becoming real, and when you're holding the advanced reader copy, you're engaging with the pages in a different way, even after you've written it. It was nothing that I'd planned to do. Uh, this begins during the height of the COVID pandemic, and we're on lockdown. At the time, I was still reporting for a television station here in Atlanta. So we were running live TV out of the house, um, homeschooling, virtual schooling our 2 young daughters. And I was a few months postpartum. Our
Wow.
son was, yeah, 4 months old when we locked down. And so I call him our pandemic baby, but he was. So I'm nursing. I'm reporting on live TV. We're schooling. We don't know what's ahead of us. And to be honest with you, I found myself deeply depressed in the middle of the night. I would get off the 11 o'clock show, and I'm thinking, what is this, and how do we come out of this?
Mm.
And so I was actually sitting in this room that I'm in right now at home one night, and I started thinking about my great grandfather, who our family didn't know a whole lot about. I knew he was a physician. There is some, you know, there's a bit of family drama, unfortunate events that are are behind the reason we didn't know a lot about him. It involves the physician's son and my grandmother. That was her first spouse, who she divorced after an abusive relationship. And so
Mm.
we carried a name, but we didn't know a whole lot about the family. Um, I did remember that he lived during this time, and I said, "How did you all get through this 100 years ago?" I'm thinking of the Spanish flu pandemic. So wasn't he practicing or something? So I start digging in digital archives because I can't sleep. And I see my great grandfather for the first time as a young man because the Mellon Foundation has supported digital archiving at Howard University. And the 1925 medical school yearbook was digitized, and I saw him for the first time as a young person. He was sitting there waiting for me.
Wow.
Turns out, yeah.
The,
And
the ancestors always call.
they're calling. They were like, "Oh, I was waiting for you to come, poking around to come ask some questions." And so he was living during the time. He was in World War I with the British West Indies Regiment, and he lands in America during Red Summer to start pre-medical studies at Howard University. And so as I start looking at war records that we had no clue he was in the war, as I start looking at those archives out of London, out of Jamaica, I'm seeing how they're dealing with the pandemic at the time on the island, in war, in Europe, and all of those things. And then what he's introduced to in America, summer of extreme racial violence, of fallout where, the World War I troops, the black troops who had fought for America, while he was fighting for the British, they're coming to this land of they're targets. They're targeted. They're lynched. There, at the same time, there's this talk of the new Negro and what he will represent for America. And he's in the Mecca. He's at the Mecca and he's there for this education. And I begin to learn about the physicians that he's training alongside, challenges with hospitals, how Black people contributed to us overcoming that pandemic, and then what they faced when they came out of school and into this world where they're making a huge difference, but they're discriminated against, disrespected, and that falls on the patient, the access that we have to quality health care. But it leads me to beginning with a first chapter that talks about the medical education of the Negro. It sets the standard for medical education in the United States. The first 4-year medical school in the US is located at a Black college in my
Wow.
home state of North Carolina, Shaw University. And so it just leads me on this journey to kind of tell these stories, to seep myself into narrative, but using an ancestor as a guide, a timeline guide, to tell the history. So I say the book is not about him. He certainly centers it. He moves us through time. Um, but then we get all these other stories. We get these different stories, and it really shapes our thinking about what health is. Because health isn't, our bodies, as we know from experience and from other wonderful books that are written, our bodies keep the count. When you're discriminated against, when systems are set up to exclude you, the stress that is in our day to day, navigating our day to day just to survive, plays into our health. And so, what does that mean to the healthcare provider and thus the patient, as we experience these things?
Well, I'm really digesting and just appreciating how layered this all is. Like you, just what you laid out, that it's in the pandemic, you're doing research and the research is available because people saw, were committed to making it available and accessible. And you're connecting your great grandfather's story in a historical, like just understanding, like this isn't the first time we've been through such an intense kind of crises, right? It's a pandemic, but when you have much more blatant, violent, raging segregation and brutality and what have you. So I'm really fascinated by how you take on a work like this and balance the whole history, data, and your families, your personal, the anchor to the ancestor, and really
Yes.
it just makes complete sense, and it's rich. It's really rich, and it's great that you have that direct connection. That's really it's very profound. So let's get in, because your book, as you started alluding to, is not just about representation, having Black people in the medical field, and also understanding that there's a long history of this, right? I mean, we don't have enough time to get into like how indigenous communities are medicinal and had their own ways of treating, and how some of that has been broken. I mean,
Absolutely.
you see a little bit of that in Sinners, and how treatment and healing looks, right?
Yes.
But so how does so that the people who are listening can understand, wow, this is how it really translates in everything from medical visits to how treatment is laid out for me, to the interaction with personnel. Just give us a little glimpse of that.
It's so fun. I do want to recognize this in the early stages of this. I had an editor ask, "Are you just covering the Black experience?" And I said, "Yes, but recognizing there's a through line with indigenous populations, with African traditions, There's a chapter in here about Onesimus, the formerly enslaved man out of Boston, who introduces this concept of vaccination to us. But the way it's explained in his enslaver's diary, um, he's giving you the West African tradition, and then these white physicians are carrying this into what gets funded, research funded, and our ideas about vaccination. So it's not lost on me that it's a Black woman during the COVID-19 pandemic that we're having that we're turning to and saying, oh, look, this vaccine has been developed in this way, and this is why you should lean into trusting it. Like,
Right.
listen to this expertise. I wondered as I was writing this chapter how many of us as a general population would have looked at our skepticism toward the vaccine differently if we understood the West African tradition that is baked into the process itself. And so it's kind of recalibrating not to say you can't be skeptical of something or distrust something, but how does your approach to thinking about this matter of healthcare change when you understand that it's not like Tuskegee where treatment is kept from us, right? Or when you are being sickened by someone, but that it comes out of a tradition that we know all too well. And so as I'm reading through archives, I'm thinking, how do we look at what is happening today through the lens of our ancestors as innovators and inventors and caretakers and who understand that healthcare is holistic?
Yes.
So, for those who can get down with this messaging of God helps those who help themselves, tools and innovation aren't bad. It's how you use it, how you exclude people from it, how you approach the care holistically, knowing that, yeah, we can have technology and innovation, but if you don't have some kind of anchoring spirituality, and I'm not talking Christianity, I'm not talking religion, I'm talking what's my mindset, what anchors me, how do I feel about my place in the world and how I got here and what guides me, and does all of these things work for the betterment of our bodies? And I think what you're getting out of this is that the exclusion of doctors, Latino doctors, indigenous physicians, Asian physicians, whatever it is, whoever you come from, the exclusion of your people in a process, it's just truly strip your identity and what you're rooted in, which is essential to your wellness. And so I think that the book could be written through many a lens, but I am of African descent. I am the narrator who is narrating through the lens of my ancestors. And so that's what it is. But I think we can take the idea of the narrative and make it applicable, you know, to our own backgrounds, our people, our traditions, and what we know works for us. You're also making me think about uh, a New York Medical Journal entry that I found. This is either late 19th or early 20th century, but an esteemed Alabama physician who's insanely racist is writing a paper for the journal. Now, this is how doctors are being trained, right? About the problem of the negress.
I
And the
believe it.
problem, yeah, the problem of the Black woman is that she's too hysterical during childbirth. It says she's got these weird traditions. The older negress is taking after birth and thinking that it can help heal you. And I'm like,
And that's a conversation today. It's wow. I believe it. Yeah.
but when it becomes mainstream, or when we see, for instance, if we're looking at white women mixing that in your shakes after your workout, that's innovation. But no, this comes from an old African tradition, and they're writing in the medical journal about how crazy Black women are. You're
Hmm.
hysterical, you're crazy. This looks a little witchy, and another thing he points to is cervical cancers. He says, I'm surprised I don't see more instances of this because of how promiscuous she is, how she uses her body. These are the standards that are headed to your Harvards, your Yales, your top medical schools at the time, this is how white physicians are being trained to look at you, your humanity, your body, all of these things. And so it's baked into the education. And it's one thing to understand this as a patient or to read something here and there. It's another thing to hold it in the archives and say, ah, I get it. That's where this thing comes from.
Wow. And how do you, in terms of I think also the way, in terms of this way, the way that this translates, like we know that the data shows that the healthcare industry or doctors believe that Black and brown folks can withstand pain longer, and just like all of these things that have been translated over, carried forth through the ages by so-called neutral experts. And so I just want people to understand how this connects to really like their day-to-day visits, the way that they're spoken to, um, the way women are, when something's happening with your body and yet your doctor is telling you, no, I don't, it's, you're imagining it, so
Yeah.
just understanding that. And then, well, I guess we'll jump. So what have you found? Because we do get into gender. What have you found about Black women doctors and their innovation and their story? Because we, as I sent you in the notes, when I just try to think a little bit off the cuff, I've seen a little bit of the presence of the Black male doctor or Black male professional here and there, very little. So we've talked about like, you've seen the portrayal of Vivian Thomas, you've seen the
Mhm.
Gilded Age, this Black
Yeah.
doctor that's being portrayed. You have now in these conversations about the reboots of, or the retelling of the story of the Little House on the Prairie series, the acknowledgement that the Black doctor who's actually talked about in the book was left out of the series, and
Yeah.
how can this round of discussion do better? So, but would love to hear what you found about Black women.
Well, I introduced you to a very special physician, a Black woman in rural Georgia in the prologue. And she's a third generation Meharry uh, medical graduate. So today, in the 21st century, she's practicing in the same house where her grandfather delivered most of the Black children in this area that we visit. She is about 70 years old and she's working. I think she takes one day off during the week
Wow.
in an area where there is no uh, public hospital. The hospital has been shut down for some time. So I find her. We talked about how to anchor this story today, and I began with a database. I said I need to stay in Georgia to rewrite this. This is last summer. And I took a physician database and I looked in a map of Georgia and I looked at the highest Black populations and fewest Black physicians available. And the database was telling me there was not one. But when I got there, I met her. And you read about her in the book. She talks about, as wonderful as her uncle and father and grandfather were, and everybody's in the medical profession, they were telling her to go find something else to do. I don't think they were saying you're not capable of being a physician. They were talking about all of the challenges she would face. And then on top of that, you being a woman. Like, hold up, this is what we're dealing with here. And trying to provide this type of care. And I mean, she was a little girl in the house where she practices now, watching them, uh, you know, see patients, and there's a prescription counter. It's like walking into her practice is like walking into it's like a movie set. It's just a blast from the past. And she grows up in this environment um where this is the only choice people have, but also, and you're gonna find this with the men and women, the physicians aren't just physicians. They begin to lead um efforts in the community, integrating schools and building banks and insurance companies. One Black physician in the narrative owned the printing press for the Atlanta Daily World was printed on, the Black newspaper in Atlanta. Like, he owned the printing press. And so they become these beacons of the community, and they begin to build us up in other ways. They don't stick to medicine, which becomes a threat, quite honestly, when you start reading how folks are talking about the power of these physicians when they come out. They're like, one of the problems is they don't just stick to medicine. They go on and they've got this like political power. They've got, you know, they get respect and agency and start to build wealth. And then they want to get into the business of this and that, education and money management and mobility and all of these things.
Right, right.
But your question, I know, is about the woman. I anchor you with a woman who we can still touch. She touches present day, but she touches a rich history, and it's her family. And I meet some folks. And this is a random reporting trip. I really approach this as I do my reporting. And I meet 3 people who tell me when I pull in their driveway, like, the only one you're gonna find around here is this physician. And so that they let me know she exists. They're like, that's who you need to go see. Um, in the chapter about America's first public hospital, which is located here in Georgia, you find out about the Black woman who led the education for nurses and physicians, not only in Savannah with her husband, but in Liberia. Let's not forget that Lincoln wants to figure out what to do with us. It's not like let them go free and all will be merry and happy. He's contacting folks in Panama, in Liberia, where do
Right,
you send the Negro when this is
right.
over? Because they cannot stay here. This is not going to work. You have a Black woman physician from Georgia who opens a hospital in Liberia for those who had chosen to, quite honestly, those who have chosen to colonize. But the Black people who have chosen to leave and relocate to Liberia. So I pull out some of that history. And then when I get to the only woman in my great grandfather's medical class, I find out she had the patent on the period calendar. And
Wow.
you're moving people forward. I would have never known this. I'm like examining the faces and then digging deeper into these folks. And I'm like, what? Who? We're not taught this. We're not taught about this innovation. And then finally, in the final chapters, you will meet. She was a medical student here at Morehouse School of Med when I basically stalked her and I was looking for her for this book. I was trying to follow someone going through the journey now, and she's now a physician in the LA area. But you see the challenges that our current medical school students may be facing uh, that once you've read the rest of the book, perhaps this challenge that they almost always overcome is because of systems that were built this way. That they are not the first to face these things. And so I worried that I didn't have enough women in there, but those 4 women, um, they stand out to me. And I hope that the bits and pieces of those stories that you get are instructive to kind of looking at the issues before us in a different way.
Well, I thank you, Nicole, so much for doing the work to bring us in because I mean, to me, it sounds like your book should be a standard in curriculum. It should be a documentary. I mean, it's really resetting. I mean, bringing information that we all suspect, but really documenting it, as you say, like, highlighting the through line. And that you're so open about connecting your own family's history
Yeah.
and understanding the imperfectness of everything. So I really appreciate that you put the work in and did the work, wrote this book and did the research and are bringing it to you're bringing it to the public where we can, carry the message forward, carry the information forward, and hopefully it reshapes the field and the way we teach and receive information. And so we're going to be circulating this, of course. Where can people find your book? Are you going to be on a book tour? Like all of those kind of things so that we can help bring visibility to your effort.
I appreciate that. I will say, I guess this month I'll put out the information on the tour, but absolutely launching in Atlanta. We're headed to Raleigh, North Carolina. Quail Ridge Books already has the registration up. DC Public Library, the Richmond Public Library, New York City, San Antonio, LA, Oakland, and headed back to Jamaica for a festival there. So, and still adding dates. I hope this is a marathon, not a sprint, to talk about the ways that we engage with ancestors and archives and narrative and all of that. So I we will I'll be all over and I'll post that soon. But I'm Nicole F. Carr on IG, on the webpage, and the book is up for pre-order now. So if you Google it, it's by Day Street, an imprint of Harper Collins, and you can get it from your favorite. I would encourage your favorite independent bookshop, but
Yeah.
wherever you choose to buy your books, it's available now. And I'm getting ready to head into the audio booth in about 2 weeks to do the audio book as well. So yeah, it's out there, it's ready for order, and I appreciate the conversation and the way you all are centering us as narrators and a part of the narrative. So thank you.
We appreciate that you gave us time. I'm really happy for your book and wishing much success. And everyone listening, we got to carry the message forward. The Price of Exclusion by Nicole Carr. We'll see you in 2 weeks at the next WMC Talks. That's right. Show that book. Congratulations, Nicole. We'll talk soon.